I'm delighted to be here this morning. I am en route to the airport to Washington, and so in light of the time that has been taken, let me try to be pointed in my remarks with a special congratulations and appreciation for the Center for Energy and the Environment. Very important. Thank you to all the leaders that have been involved in this very important effort and all of those who have sponsored the challenge that we have in dealing with energy and the environment. I want to acknowledge Dr. William Santiago, Global Ambassador for Peace, Global Embassy of Activists for Peace, Dr. Susan Pacheco, Associate Professor, University of Texas, pediatrician of the McGovern Medical School, Dr. John R. Anderson, Earth Science, White School of Natural Sciences, Rice University, and Brian Perez, Texas Environmental Justice Advocacy Services, and Hannah B. Herrero, engineer in aerospace sciences for NASA. Interestingly enough, I fund and work very hard to advocate for NASA. Let me also take a special moment to thank the students. Are there students in the room? If you'd raise your hand, please. Students in the room. Don't be shy. Your hand looks like it's not up. Looks like you are among the few. But in any event, let me encourage you as a student to certainly carry the message of the need to protect our Earth and the commonality, the collaboration, the coalescing that we do across national and international boundaries as it relates to the environment and the protection of the environment, because we are all custodians of this beautiful place called Earth. As a 12-year member of the House Science Committee, I can certainly appreciate the expanse of the Earth in the beauty of the many planets that we have and the place and role that we play by being on the Science Committee and having been part of the legislation to construct the space station, to have interacted with astronauts who have told of the beauty of what they have seen, but also the beauty of the Earth when you see it from space. And so it gives us a special responsibility. Let me speak pointedly and quickly, but hopefully leave you with a message of action. Because I think that even as we listen to scientists and we understand the technical aspects, and maybe all of you in this room are scientists, you really need to put it in layman's terms about how you can be energized and active. The only way that we can expand the movement of environmental concern is for the average person who lives in a hut in Africa, on the Rio Grande, or in the depths of Mississippi, or in the outlying areas of London, England, or in places in China that are far away from Beijing and many other places, is to speak in that common language. So let me just say that climate change is a challenge of our lifetime. And I think if I spoke in many languages and went to places that are far away and said to them that climate change, the protection of the environment, is the challenge of our lifetime, and whatever language I spoke, it would be understood. And for too many years, we have heard the warnings from prominent scientists regarding the danger for people if nothing is done to reverse the amounts of greenhouse gases released from the atmosphere. In 2015, the Pentagon published a report that found climate change to be a security risk because it degrades living conditions, human security, and the ability of governments to meet the basic needs of their populations, and that is a global statement around the world. So that we can energize populations around the fact of human security. Use that terminology. We want your children, your children's children, to be secure no matter what the conditions that you're living in. And certainly if you're living in devastating conditions of dirty water, of poor food, and dirty conditions, if you will, because of poverty, because of developing nations, we should be concerned about that. But if we tell those same people that it is the challenge of their lifetime, that it deals with human security, there may be that kind of energy that we need. Communities within the United States and countries around the world that already are fragile and have limited resources are significantly more vulnerable to disruption, far less likely to respond effectively, and to be resilient to new challenges caused by climate change. There lies those of us who are advocates and who are energized behind the question of the environment. The Department of Defense's primary responsibility is to protect national security interests around the world. Your primary responsibility in this centers is to reach out to those communities that are not informed about how the conditions that they live in, and that their government should be concerned about improving those basic conditions around their living environment. And that, of course, most of all, is clean water. Because of its, the Department of Defense in its work involves considering all aspects of the global security environment and planning appropriately for potential contingencies. A very unusual department, because you think of the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States or the Department of Energy, but it is a national security question. The ability of the United States and other countries to cope with risks and implications of climate change requires monitoring, analysis, integration of those risks into existing overall risk management measurements as appropriate for each combatant command. This, of course, is the role of our scientists, but more importantly, to reach the civilian population so that they can take control of their own destiny. I am someone who believes in finding ways to communicate with all of those who are concerned about these very important issues. Food security must be a priority, and as I indicated, clean water has to be a priority. The power generation capacity of a nation is not limitless. In fact, Canadian electric utilities supply electricity to states in the Northeast, which could be in doubt if temperature extremes makes it necessary for Canada to withhold power because of their own need to protect their citizens. All of this is interrelated, and therefore it is crucial for us to be concerned about climate change and the impact on the world population. The warmest years on record since temperatures have been recorded occurred in 2016, but had an increase of 0.94 degrees Celsius. 2015, which had an increase of 0.90 degrees Celsius. 2014, which had an increase of 0.74 degrees Celsius. And 2010, which had an increase of 0.70, which really indicates that in this century, we are seeing the impact of climate change. Hurricane Katrina occurred in 2005, but it was a storm unlike any that had been seen. Certainly the aftermath of the breaking of the dikes that impacted New Orleans, but the storm was unusual. The people greatly impacted were the poor of New Orleans and Mississippi. Over 1,800 people died in consequence of the largest incident of loss of life since September 11th. In the 1990s, on average, the nation experienced 30 natural disaster declarations. But even in these last couple of years, you've been able to see whether it has been tornadoes, hurricanes, massive flooding, that something is awry in the United States and, of course, around the world. Human activities, especially the burning of fossil fuels, beginning with the Industrial Revolution, have increased atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations by about 40%, with more than half the increase going since the 1970s. The Earth has a climate control system. Seawater moves through the Atlantic as part of what is called the global ocean conveyor, which is a regular pattern that seawater travels throughout the world's oceans. We can study how water moves. The water in the global ocean conveyor circulates because of differences in water density, which are caused by differences in temperatures and salinity. Colder water is denser than warmer water, while saltier water is denser than that saltier water or fresh water. All of this has to have a delicate balance of saltier water and colder water, keeps the temperature of the Earth in a range where climates are predictable. The Earth has warm weather because water heated near the equator travels at the surface of the ocean north into cold high latitudes where it becomes cooler. And so we must keep the balance. Predictable climate supports agriculture, reduces damaging storms, flooding, as well as supports the health and well-being of the people. If you live in Houston for any period of time and over the years, you can calculate the differences that have been made. Now, what should be our goal and our approach, aside from the enormous facts that you will hear today from the experts and certainly those who practice the study of climate and weather and sustainability? It has to be action. I think action involves you in your local community councils. It involves you in county commissioners court if you live here. But more importantly, it involves you in your national government, no matter what country you may live in. For it is a responsibility of the national government to be clearly engaged in this work. For example, as I go back to Washington, we will be addressing the president's budget, which in essence almost guts the Environmental Protection Agency here in the United States by closing or laying off 3,000 employees in the Environmental Protection Agency. And what does that entity do? That entity deals with primarily clean water, clean air. Clean water, clean air. Or clean air, clean water, clean air. However you say it. It is a lifeline of all of us here in this country, and it is a reflection of what the world sees. If America is concerned about sustainability and protecting of the beauty of the earth, protecting our national forests, protecting our lakes, rivers, and other tribunals, if it is prepared to fix dams and water systems, if it is prepared to make sure we have clean water, then we set a standard. The United Nations has a very high profile on the environment. And so I would offer to say that this is a time for the civil rights movement of the environment, and for all of us to be advocates of one through letter writing, tweeting, advocacy, meetings in communities, and right beyond the ivory towers of Rice University are communities that need the help of those of you in this room. The question will be whether we'll get out of our ivory tower, whether members of the United States Congress and other elected officials will begin to be advocating that it is a responsibility of all of us to protect the environment. I hope today will be a productive time for you, energized to be able to take the message that you are fostering here in this room to people around the community, around the nation, and around the world. Thank you so very much.
We appreciate Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, 18th Congressional District.